Is that Sid Smith? Yes. Viewers may be astonished at the clarity of the picture today. We've got a high-res feed from our geosynchronous orbit. We're actually in the Bob Rue Morgue station. We're in geosynchronous orbit, and they told us we could orbit over any location on the Earth's surface we requested. So we are actually hovering over Rotherham at the moment, and for the pure reason that's where our router for our maxed up idiot wind signal is coming from. You might know if you live in Rotherham, it's on a little pub there. It's called the White Horse Tavern, just a few steps down there on Armageddon Street. And okay, well, today, Sid, this is Sid Smith, my colleague. He's in the anterior of the orbiting space station, and I'm in the control room, as you can tell from my surroundings. We're on episode 37 of our blustering, winding odyssey through the catalogue of Bob Dylan's definitive vinyl collection. And as you can see from the cover of the magazine, it's Tempest, episode 37, Tempest. This is quite an impressive picture on the front. It's the front cover of Tempest. Actually, it's a terrible cover. I'm just being facetious there. And inside, there's a whole range of other great pictures. Look at that picture of Bob and his band. Isn't that great? I might be showing you that picture again in just a few seconds, but I wonder where they've got that one from. So this is an album released in 2012. And I first heard this album on this CD, which I bought upon release. As you can see from this label, it's the deluxe limited edition. And the reason it's deluxe, and I must show you this because this is genuinely impressive and not a marketing gimmick in any way. And I'm not an idiot for falling for this in any way at all. I'm a serious, discerning consumer. But it says 10 brand new songs, which you got on the non-deluxe version as well, with the extra few quid, and includes 60-page bound notebook. Bound, but very expensive, with 28 rare vintage international magazine covers featuring Bob Dylan, created exclusively for this package. So see this, the album slides out, and in this no way cumbersome thing here with this cardboard pong thing, you get this Tempest notebook, and it's full of some fantastic. See this, look. I haven't filled this in, shamefully. Please return to, in case I lose my Tempest notebook in the street somewhere in Berlin or Paris or Madrid. And I wonder who's left this valuable collector's item. And it's a notebook, basically, but on every facing page, there's some historical, unlabeled magazine cover. There's some quite nice ones, but it is indeed. Look at that one. I think he's in Pat Barrett and Billy the Kid there, and it goes on and on, as you can tell. And look at that. Remember that, the story of pop. Remember that magazine? Yeah. So there's an historical glimpse of our memory cells refiring. This is from a magazine just called Fans. I think it could be the official magazine of the European Fan Association. It looks a bit Italian, that. The people who make fans in Italy are very keen on Bob Dylan, obviously. Anyway, that's not what we're discussing today. We're discussing the fabulous vinyl edition presented by the creators of our wonderful magazine series. And as you can see, I'm just doing an unboxing. I've always wanted to do one of these when they unwrap it on a video. And I have opened this and played this record, but I'm now removing the shrink wrap, so you can see how pristine this fabulous album cover is. And if you just look inside the cover there, you might get one little tiny clue as to where the picture came from for this episode's fabulous magazine. It's just the first thing you see when you take the record out of the sleeve. Well done, creators of the magazine, again, for your immaculate and extensive and intensive picture research. Anyway, this is presented as a double album. There's Bob looking very menacing there, and the track listing, and this very attractive other side of this. You see. Again, the remarkable techniques of design and graphics brought to the World of Bob Dylan. At least that one's got the people who play on the album inside. So that's quite good, isn't it? Right, this is produced by Jack Frost and engineered by Scott Litt, who was actually the producer on many of the early and classic REM albums.
Yeah.
I don't remember his name. What do you think of this one?
Well,
throwing it open to you.
You've upturned the apple cart here, because normally
Yes.
you stall on the virtues of the album. Well,
I just want to bring a bit of novelty into it.
I've got sort of a strong memory of when Tempest came out.
Oh yeah.
And the reason why I've got a strong memory of when Tempest came out was
you hated it.
It was featured. It was to be the featured album on Radio 6 Music, I think it was called, or is called. And less than 24 hours before it became the featured album, and it was the featured album on the day of the release of the album.
Oh yeah.
I got an email from the editor of BBC Music saying, I'm paraphrasing, saying, "You're an old fart. Can you write some words about the new Bob Dylan album?" And I mean, there was a kind of a weird hurdle jumping process that you had to go through to get an audio copy of the thing. I mean, obviously it was a digital file. It wasn't a physical copy, because there was less than 24 hours to listen to the album. So I actually found myself, and of course, in typical PR lackadaisical world, I get in touch with the PR people and they sort of say, "Oh we'll get that link to you." And I've explained there's a time constraint.
Time is of the essence.
I wanted to, kind of have some time to at least listen to the album. And bearing in mind, I can't remember what day it was, but let's call it a Monday. And it was like and the album was going to be out on a Tuesday, whenever. And it was sort of like, it was 3:00 in the afternoon and I still hadn't got the link. And I didn't get the link for Tempest until like into the early evening. So I actually sat up and played the album and played the album and played the album over and over again, making copious notes as I went through it. And it was I think I filed my copy at something like 3:00 in the morning. It was like something mad like that.
Yeah.
To sort of basically hit, because the editor had said we need your copy by, and it was something like 6 a.m. or something mad like that. I can't remember the detail of it all now. It was so long ago. And so I'd love to say, it was like a kind of a Kerouac benzene and whiskey fueled, writing at the hot typewriter of critical whatever, but it wasn't like that at all. It was just cups of tea basically, and so I had to kind of respond to this music, all for the sake of a bit of money, which so no wonder I felt a bit dirty and cheap afterwards. But I often feel like that after listening to Bob Dylan albums anyway, so fair enough. But so I do remember this album vividly. After it, so that day, the day of the album's release, it was featured. The album was featured all day through Radio 6's schedule. And, and the mad thing about it was there was once or twice, there was a kind of a reference to the review.
So let's get this straight. Tony Blackburn actually mentioned your name on the radio when.
So I kind of ended up writing this thing, and which of course I'm deeply ashamed of, because.
Have we seen this review? That was another question I was going to ask. If we go onto the BBC website, can we find your review?
You can, and
Oh,
it's don't worry, I've got it here, and I'm going to quote from it.
brilliant! You just
But
read it out for that'll be your contribution.
yeah, well, that's exactly right. And if
Yeah.
only it was this easy every time.
I
So
should say, I should pretend to be BBC every week.
so
You need to review the live in 1996 album.
so it was extraordinary listening to this music. And on the one hand, you know, you've got Bob Dylan, you know, the edifice of Bob Dylan, to deal with, you know, the legendary stuff and all the rest of it. And it was the fact that it was, my memory of it is, and actually this is borne out by the, there was almost no PR, it was embargoed. There was almost no reference to, there certainly wasn't a press campaign in the run up to it. I think it might have been said Bob Dylan's releasing a new album or something, but my memory, and I could be wrong here, but my memory is it was sort of like it just sort of arrived, you know, without any fanfare, without any kind of you know, pre-press drum beating. So there was this element of surprise about the event. It was sort of like well, it was kind of like, remember when that David Bowie album just appeared
the next day?
Yeah. It was sort of like that. Like everybody was, one imagines all the Bob Dylan fans would have been taken a bit aback by the appearance of this album. So the review kind of referenced my literally kind of trying to assimilate the music in very short order and trying to get through it. And it's interesting reading what I wrote back then about it and kind of hearing what I hear now. And I was quite in the review, I was sort of quite dismissive about a couple of tracks, which now I feel are lovely tracks, you know.
Are your favourites?
Almost. Duquesne Whistle, I sort of describe as I think I describe as a piece of fluff, you know. Whereas today, you know, Duquesne Whistle kind of cheers me up every time I hear it. It puts a smile on, you know. It's the Bob Dylan I love, you know. It's up tempo. It's you know, it's jolly japes. It's and of course we're dealing with his voice. His voice is astonishing on the album, and I think that's sort of, I can't remember at the time what the last Bob Dylan album I would have heard, you know, contemporary Bob Dylan album I would have heard. I've got no idea what that would have been.
Would it have been the freewheeling Bob Dylan?
Yes, but I do know that his voice didn't sound like this, you know.
Oh yeah.
It was kind of, and so that took a little bit of assimilation, you know. You kind of, all right, okay, so we're doing this now. And there was other parts of the album which I thought were well, I wouldn't normally have the facility to do this, but allow me to put my glasses on and read.
I'm keen to hear what you wrote now.
Well, I'd quell your
Come on, tell us.
But like its predecessors, this set's pace and style is informal and in most respects largely unremarkable beyond the grizzled patina of Dylan's rasping delivery.
That's what our viewers are saying to you now. Your comments.
So then I go on. I'll just read this, get it out of the way.
Yes.
Songs come and go in a hazy cloud of fashionably bedraggled blues and country-derived tunes. Though all are blessed with a wry and dusty charm that's hard to dislike, too many are ruled out in a way that seems more to do with autopilot than passion. Narrowway and Duquesne Whistle might be jaunty toe tappers, but they're also examples of the lightweight fluff that blows around the album. I love Duquesne Whistle. Why did I dismiss it like that? But anyway,
Well, I think this casts all your comments on previous episodes into a new light as well. You don't know what you're talking about.
Dylan's penchant for the perverse manifests itself during the title track, a plodding account of the sinking of the Titanic that makes William McGonagall's infinitely awful poem, The Tay Bridge Disaster, seem like a paragon of good taste and eloquence.
Well, I agree with that.
Yeah. Though Dylan's got plenty of form for taking 13 minutes to say something that could be said in less than half that time, this is an exceptionally mawkish dirge. Much like the passenger on that poor benighted vessel, it's something that's probably best avoided if at all possible. There are, however, a few dark and brooding corners where Dylan's powers are thrillingly undiminished and clearly in rude health. Scarlet Town's hypnotic intensity drips sweat and menace, while the raggedy Cajun-infused lurch of early Roman kings conjures a swaggering procession of characters every bit as entertaining as they are dangerous. I mean, you know, I don't know. Anyway,
well done.
It was late. It was late in the evening when
early in the morning. We were that one. Yeah.
And don't worry, we're into the final stretch here. Though it doesn't win any awards for originality, Tin Angel expertly illustrates a tautly drawn lover's triangle. Richly atmospheric, Dylan expertly rotates the perspective of each doomed participant around the woozy sultriness of Tony Garnier's acoustic bass. The closer, Roland John, poignantly comments on John Lennon's passing while avoiding sentimentality, striking up an impressive and often beautiful valediction. It comprises a redeeming climax to what is, overall, a rather mixed Dylan offering. So there you are.
Well, thank you for your comments. I think you'll stand by that in this broadcast.
And the postscript to that is that when that went online, the manager of the site at the time said to me, said, "Yeah, I don't want to worry, but we've started receiving death threats."
Yeah, and you rustled the Bobcats there with that.
The Bobcats were not happy with that review. And there's only one other review that I did for the BBC where I received death threats, and that was a Dream Theater album, which, as I remember, was a, you know, I mean, I gave it a sort of a, you know, I said it was all right, you know, it was, and I extolled
not
some
good enough, mate. Dream Theater. But death threats from Dream Theater fans.
But that was no good for Dream Theater fans, and that review was no good for the Bobcats. So,
I wish I'd known this story in episode 1. To be honest,
in my defence, I had about 6 hours to listen to the album and write the review. Having said that, my choice of tracks to focus on might be different if I was to write it now, and certainly Duquesne Whistle, which I'd sort of dismissed a bit, although actually it is lightweight fluff, Duquesne Whistle, but that is part of the charm for me about that track. It's not. I mean, for me, it's an absolute mixed bag. It has the
albums.
It has moments of charm and character and interest, and it has all the other things. It has some of the, you know, the more excessive side of Dylan's you know, kind of way of working and writing songs that put me off Bob Dylan. I mean, I think the title track Tempest is unremittingly awful. I listened to it yesterday ahead of talking to you, and it's still bloody awful.
Yeah. Well,
anyway, you know, what did you think of the album, Sean?
Well, I think you'd be surprised to learn my views are probably quite similar to yours on this album. I think this is a mixed bag of an album. Is a good way of describing it. I think it's a lot better than Together Through Life, which is the one we discussed last when we last met, and it made me think, because, you know, this is Tempest. I'm holding the CD up and not the record for a reason. I think these later, From Time Out of Mind onwards, these later Bob albums are designed for the world of the CD, in that basically how long they are. Together Through Life is an anomaly in many ways, partly because nearly all the songs are co-written with Robert Hunter, who co-wrote Duquesne Whistle, actually. That's the only good song they've ever written. And that was written during the sessions with Together Through Life, and Bob just hung on to it and obviously saved it. Well, I'm not putting it on this. I'll save it for something better later on. And that's what he's done. But Together Through Life, even though it seems interminable when you're playing it, is only 45 minutes long. And for that reason, it does stand out from this run of albums. Time Out of Mind, I was looking today, is 1 hour and 13 minutes. Love and Theft is just under an hour. Modern Times is over an hour. And this album, even though it's got the same number of tracks as Together Through Life, is nearly 25 minutes longer than Together Through Life. So this is obviously an album that he's designed knowing he's got this time on the CD. And he's going to give you a fair enough wodge of sound. That being said, I would prefer if this one was 45 minutes long, because I think you could get a great 45-minute record from these songs. And I think the album starts off with its strongest songs. Duquesne Whistle, as you said, it's not about anything really. He's not trying to analyze, anatomize the world. He's having a laugh. And you see the video for that song, the famous video, and it came out before the album as a single online, you know. And that video is extremely droll. And he's walking down and he's supposed to be walking down the street with a bunch of ne'er-do-wells, slapping over homeless people, looking like he's the most miserable man in the world, while Duquesne Whistle plays in the background, and he's saying lines, you say I'm a gambler, you say I'm a pimp, and I ain't neither one. and I don't know, there's something about it that just cheers me up, as you say, that your phrase. It's a laugh, isn't it? It's delightful. Duquesne Whistle is delightful.
Yeah.
And it's totally out of mood with the rest of the album, which is often very kind of intense, you know.
Yeah.
But after that, we get Soon After Midnight, which again it's not going to rock the world, but I just like the song. I think it's a nice song, and it includes a remarkable. It's a love song, during which he sings the line, "When I first met you, I didn't think you'd do," which I don't know. That's a fantastic line. To say to the woman you're trying to woo you. When I first met you, I didn't think you'd do. I don't know. I think it's dry. I think it's very funny. Narrow Way is okay. I played that this morning. Narrow Way, and it's I can't work up to you. You're going to have to work down to me. And then we get Long and Wasted Years, which is a very short track in which there's no chorus. He just keeps singing this winding verse, and you only get the title phrase once at the very end. And, you know, a lot of listeners, I suppose, when I first heard the record, I thought, well, that's okay. But when you hear that song live, it's just a remarkable song. I mean, the live version knocks this into the dust. But after I've heard the live version at Blackpool in 2013, I thought that's fantastic. It really is, you know. This kind of semi-confused marriage in trouble. Is there anywhere we can go? Is there anyone we can? Is there anyone we can see? You know, and I don't know. It's charming. And it sounds really kind of heartfelt as well. I really like Long and Wasted Years. I think it's the hidden secret best track on the record. Pay in Blood. It's got that great chorus. I pay in blood, but not my own. And again, that was a very popular song live. Scarlet Town isn't bad. I mean, I've been hearing your remarks about Tony Garnier's sultry bass on another track during your recitation of your marvelous, I must say, very well written review, despite the pressure you were under. Scarlet Town is okay. It's where it starts to go off a bit for me, because it's basically, it sounds like an attempt to do a song called Hell's My Wife Hometown off the Together Through Life. It sounds like a bloody attempt to do that kind of song correctly. You know, to me that version, and it's probably a bit too long. Early Roman Kings, very good. He was still playing that in the early stretches of the Rough and Rowdy Ways tour. He was still doing a version of Early Roman Kings. He's obviously very fond of Early Roman Kings. After that, however, the last 3 tracks, I think this entire album would be better without at least 2 of them. Tin Angel, which you went into some length to describe in your review, its tangled love triangle. I somewhat blasphemously in Dylan circles have a bit of trouble with the track Lily, Rosemary and the Queen of Hearts off Blood on the Tracks. Blood on the Tracks, I think, you don't, but I think it is a masterpiece, one of the best albums ever made. That track is pretty interminable to me. There is other versions where he does it a bit slower, where the story comes to life a bit more. But in that's a kind of love triangle as well. And I just lose the will to live. I don't know who he's talking about, and I don't care. It's one of the few times in my life I feel a bit sorry for Joan Baez. When he wrote it, he was so excited. He rang her up from a phone box in New York and read her the entire words of that song down the phone. She got a book with her. I feel a bit the same about Tin Angel. There is a love triangle, and everyone ends up dead at the end. It's a bit similar in the terms of the plot to Lily, Rosemary, etc. But I don't care. I just don't. I can't tell who's dying. I don't know what the relationship is, and it doesn't really make me want to find out.
I mean, it's interesting you say that, because that's exactly how I feel about 90% of what we listen to on these albums. It's something that's happening, and I just find it very hard to get involved in it. But
Yeah.
but what's
I've not got to my sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say in the 7 minutes we have left.
Okay, well,
I was going to say
we go through the last 2 songs.
All right,
okay, song. Tempest is awful. I hate the Irish fucking traditional sound of it. The lyrics are awful. It's just awful. I mean, I don't know what he was thinking with Tempest. I think he's got some general idea of, oh, it's the world and we're all... It doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. And the constant references to the film are stupid. And that's all I'll say. The less I say about the track Tempest, the better. I think it's a very, very duff track. And then Roll On John, I think is very well intentioned. He was a friend of John Lennon, not John Dylan, John Lennon. And at that Blackpool concert where I heard Long and Wasted Years, it was a very moving moment. Blackpool is important in the Lennon story. Allegedly, that's where his awful parents asked the young John to choose between them on the front, you know, when they were splitting up, which is appalling cruelty for a kid who was about 8 years old. Dylan obviously knew that story, but at that concert, without any other introduction, he played that song for the first time he'd played it anywhere in Blackpool. And he didn't play it again until one night at the Royal Albert Hall that same tour, and I don't think he's ever played it since. So London and Blackpool, he knew were the important places for John. And it's obviously heartfelt and it's obviously well-intentioned. I just think it's a bit lazy and doesn't work. I think it's full of obvious references to Lennon's work. And if Lennon had still been alive, he would have royally taken the piss out of that song. Anyway, overall, though, until the last stretch, I think this is a big improvement, apart from his voice, which is the worst vocals on any Dylan album on this. His voice, and he realizes that himself. When he hears the album back, he decides to take action about his voice, and we'll, in an episode or two, we'll be coming on to what he did just to cope with that. And his voice has been a lot better since. My favourite track on this, I loved UK and Whistle, I love Paying Blood, I love Early Roman Kings. My favourite track is Long and Wasted Years, because whenever I hear a bootleg, I've got a bootleg of that Blackpool gig, and whenever I hear that intro, I think, that sounds fantastic, and he really delivers it in a beautiful modulated voice as well. It's just a recitation, really. It's not like he's singing it, but it really works. And also, it's very concise. I think it's a lovely atmospheric song.
My
Sure.
my favorite track, obviously, it would be Duquesne Whistle for
Yeah.
all the reasons I mentioned earlier.
Mhm.
As I said, never fails to put a smile on my face. Okay, so that's Tempest dispatched. What's next in the definitive vinyl series?
Well, this is interesting because we're in episode 37 now, and the series itself from the next issue of the magazine goes into the songbook stuff. But I think we'll do all those 3 albums in one episode. So we're going to pop an album, and next time we'll be at the Royal Albert Hall for the real Royal Albert Hall concert in 1966, and we'll be hearing the controversial sound of one of the most famous rock tours of all time. Try and stay excited for next week, and I expect to hear a full review like the one you've just read about Tempest.